I don't know if we have time to even properly introduce Mike Jones because of the extensive and awesome career. How should someone look you up if they don't somehow already know who you are?
Sure. So I run a venture firm in town called Science, and we co-found companies, and we've co-founded about 100 some companies over the last 14 years. Some of these are all brands that we've co-founded. So Liquid Death, we're the largest single investor, and we started that business about 7 years ago with Mike Cesario, the founder. Dollar Shave Club, we did with a fellow named Mike Dubin, who's also local here in Venice with me. MeUndies, we helped start, and we started a company called Dog Vacay that merged into Rover, and we sold that to Blackstone for $2.4 billion last year. So we work across a portfolio of startups that are typically really, really early stage. They're founders that have a dream, and maybe they have one or two people on their team. Maybe they have a prototype, and they work with us. And my team and I kind of surround them with skills and talent and resources and capital. And if we get lucky, over the next, 4 to 10 years, we end up with $1 billion business.
I mean, I'm not the world's expert on this, but I feel like there's kind of a stigma that most venture studios really don't work. And there's kind of this one exception being yours.
Oh, thanks. I mean, honestly, historically, they have worked. In fact, LA was home to Idea Lab, which is out in Pasadena. And Bill Gross has probably the largest track record of IPOs, maybe of any living human right now. But I mean, he has an incredible amount of companies between the 90s and early 2000s he's put out in the venture studio structure. So the venture studio space basically is an alternative to a traditional venture path. So instead of just pure capital, you end up with capital and resources. You give up some level of equity through the pricing of that capital. But you end up with what I would argue a higher likelihood of success and outcomes because you end up with like experienced individuals to help you guide you through the process. We have roughly like a 10% super hit ratio, maybe another 10% of really good, maybe 15% of good outcomes. And the rest end up being kind of like stable, maybe profitable walking dead companies we can't sell, or just startups that didn't become successful. So even with all of our expertise and the large number of businesses that I've done, we're still hitting, I would argue, a 10 to 20% average.
Do you think does it skew more towards like selecting the right team and problem in the first place, or like how you kind of guide it along the way?
Like on what makes a great...
Yeah, like what get something into that 10% big winner?
I mean, it's really hard. And I assume this is a room full of people trying to start companies, right? I mean, I can assume everyone here is trying to start a company beyond the investors that are trying to talk to you guys about starting companies. So it's a confabulation of multiple factors that have hit at the exact same time. And, one thing I noted is I appreciated the last presentation on like the pitch and the language and the spelling and all the components of conveying a message is super critical. That's true. But the other thing you have to remember is that there's also this component of timing, right? And so, if I'm sitting here looking at pitches all day and I'm getting just one after another of AI pitches that are promising me, we're the next OpenAI, we're the next $10 billion company, we're a $50 billion company. And you come in with something that's like good, like, I don't know, a water company, and you're like, this is going to be great. And I'm like, yeah, but the last like 10 people came in here told me that they were all going to be worth $10 billion. And you're trying to find a way to like put water in a can, right? And so one of the problems here, right, is that you may have a great concept, but you also may be in a market where everyone's putting their money or their time into completely alternative strategies. And it doesn't reflect your pitch, right? It just reflects the environment of the moment, which is true for kind of anything in life, right? It's like you can be prepared for something and you could walk into a room or you could meet someone on a date or go out to a great dinner or go into do a business deal. But the counterparty that you're talking to, their state of mind, their context matters very heavily in you becoming successful in that interaction. And that's very true for venture. You can have that perfect pitch, but it may just be completely different or offset from what they've previously been looking at, like even that day.
Timing is so important, and it's almost impossible to know till afterwards whether you were in the right time frame.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I think it's definitely impossible to know. And there's this interesting mix as a founder, and we can talk a lot maybe now about what it is to be a founder, right?
Yeah.
What it is to like start something from scratch and go on that journey, because that's what everyone here is doing. And it's actually like a super primal, incredible thing that I think is beautiful in Los Angeles because it's about creation, right? And one thing that's true to be a founder is that I would argue you have to start with belief, right? Because you have to wake up one day and believe that you can do something better than everything else out there, right? You're looking at the space and you're like, water shouldn't be in plastic. It should be in aluminum. It should look cool. And I'm going to decide to dedicate the next 20 years of my life, probably unpaid for many years of those, to do something that no one else has done just because today I woke up and decided this is what I'm going to do. Right. And most people don't have that level of conviction, right? Because they don't wake up being driven like that. So the ones that become great founders are driven off of a very long mission, right? And they have a belief structure behind that mission that kind of propels them. And that belief structure that they have is what attracts you to them, right? Because they're like, I'm on a mission. So founders are prophets, right? They're religious leaders, they're spiritual leaders, they're guides. They build capital around them, they build talent, they build fans, they build supporters, advisors, investors, staff, salespeople, customers. They build this entire ecosystem around there. But at the core is their vision, right? And so one thing that's true is I see people pitch me on concepts, but not vision, right? So like I remember this kid coming in because I was also the CEO of MySpace, which was a nice big LA company, obviously a predecessor to Facebook. And after I sold MySpace, I was pitched every social network known to man, right? And so some, and I'll pick on older guys. I'm 50, but some 45-year-old guy comes in and be like, I know what every college kid needs right now. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure you do. Like, tell me well, I've done all the studies and here's the business use case and here's the Harvard case study. Here's all the data. This is the next platform that's going to disrupt Facebook, right? So sometimes you get these mercenaries that they're not vision, right? They're logic. And they get a bunch of logic on why the market needs this, right? But they don't have vision, right? So a lot of times when I'm looking at this, any concept that we're all going after, you might say, does the market want this? Do I feel passionate? But then the other question you have to ask yourself is, am I the right person to do this? Like, do I truly hold that vision? Or is it just math? And I just am investing in the math and the statistics? Because the reality is these are such hard journeys that you're going on to start a company. Math won't propel you through the journey. Like if you want to go to greatness, you can't do it off of a spreadsheet, right? You got to do it off of your soul. And so, when I'm meeting founders, I'm looking for people that want to connect at that level on that mission. And many times, their position with me is, hey, I'm going to do it with or without your help. And by the way, there's nothing that gets, an investor more excited when they realize that this person's just going to do it no matter fucking what, right? Because that's conviction. Now, as an investor, I have to look at that and be like, congratulations, you're successful. You built the best dry cleaner in Los Angeles. Am I going to make money on that? How long is that going to take me to cash out? Will my capital be deployed effectively within this space? So that may make me not want to invest, right? But at least you have conviction in the mission.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm taking away from this is I think you're in the right career path.
For myself,
yeah. Because I can tell that you are, try not to get too meta here. I can tell you have that authentic passion about people who have and convey that authentic passion.
Sure.
It's just the way you're talking about this now. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything I would ever ask someone to learn to be a better pitcher, better communicator, it's to find that and build that from there. Do you have any like favorite stories of where like someone pitched you something and it was just like obvious?
Yeah, I've had obvious pitches, and it's funny. I sat in this room. It was pitched Liquid Death at the Yellow Accelerator Day, like here when this was Snapchat's headquarters. So I've been pitched. I've been pitched most stuff. Like I saw many things. I passed on many things that became great things. I passed on many. It's funny. I meet founders all the time. They're like, I pitched you 5 years ago. I'm like, did it work out? Like did I make a bad call? I'm you're always a little bit happy when they're like, no, it folded. I'm like, oh, thank God, I made the right decision. Sorry for your failure. But I guess like favorite pitchers, I probably wouldn't say I have a favorite pitch because for me, like I'll tell you that I can tell the Liquid Death. I can tell you that our
what landed from Liquid Death?
Sure. So what happened with Liquid Death, right, was a lot of things led up to this moment, and this is what you're going to true for many investors: is when you bring them a solution or you bring them a company idea, what you're hoping for is they've been thinking about this problem way before you stepped in the room, right? So my context is I decided really early in my life to never drink alcohol. So I just decided at like age 12 I was never going to drink alcohol, and so it happened to also be that the Woolsey fire had ravished Malibu, and I was living in Malibu at the time, and these guys come in and the other tangential factors, I had the same time with Diageo, because Diageo was coming in saying, hey, what do? we're seeing massive decline on alcohol sales because kids aren't drinking hard alcohol. We're like, yeah, they're all smoking weed. You should buy a cannabis company, right? Which of course they can't do because of regulations. So we'd seen the data that basically alcohol sales is falling. I had a personal connection to like the anti-alcohol kind of movement, straight edge, alternative beverages sector. Then these guys come in and they're like, plastic's terrible for the environment. I'm like, yeah. And they just have this prototype can, right? So they have this big piece of aluminum that was the original white tall boy can manufactured in Europe with the cool death imagery. And they're like, this is death to plastic. This is like a super cool can. And we think we can get people drinking this versus plastic because they want to get rid of plastic. And they're like, by the way, like if you go to a concert, and you hold like that plastic, totally terrible bottle of water that they've chosen to put in this facility, like you look stupid. And they're like, so if you hold our can, you're going to look way cooler. Happened to be that we, including my family, were going to this like charity concert we put on with the Red Hot Chili Peppers to raise money for the Malibu fires. And we were at the Palladium and I went to the bar and ordered water, which they give me probably literally that exact Kirkland bottle of crappy plastic water. And I'm sitting there and everyone has all their cool drinks and I'm holding this plastic thing of water. And I was like, I do feel really lame right now. And the next day I come back to the office and this can's sitting on my desk. So it's like many things lined up for that moment of why I had conviction for the space. And it took multiple signals before I was like, yeah, I think this works, right? And then for us, we do a lot of co-building. So we're like, well, let's co-build the company together. And then we started seeing the positive metrics that we need to have real capital conviction, whether that's social, virality, sharing. We want specific data points from the founders. We want certain responsiveness from the founders. So like, then we go into our process of like, hey, we believe something's here. Are you the guys to do it? Is this the product that's going to nail it down? And let's start the process. So that was kind of the liquid death pitch.
I get it. And that to me uncovers another like really important truth about, if you want to just narrow it down to the pitch, in that it doesn't exist as like one thing that you just blast out there. It's a conversation. And again, without being curious about your story, they could never have known that you cared about it on these different levels. So yeah, if there's a takeaway that I'm getting from that is to always get as related as you can to the other party in the conversation. And yeah, every pitch is just exactly that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Any, you kind of hinted at it, are there any investments you've missed that you still think about?
I mean, there's tons of investments I missed. We all missed Bitcoin at 30 cents. So it's like, we can all feel shitty about that if you want. We all missed Apple. We all missed Tesla at some level, right? So there's no point in that retrospective. I remember though, like I never got officially pitched Airbnb, but I remember hearing about Airbnb and being like, that'll never work. Like couch surfing? Are you kidding me? Like that just sounds disgusting, right? Like I would have never guessed we'd be in a world where I'm like, yeah, let's just rent this person's house. I mean, it's so cool and such an impactful platform that I absolutely love it. But there's a time because like when Dog Vacay pitched me, they were like, it's, Airbnb for dogs. And I was like, but Airbnb is a terrible idea. Why would I want a terrible idea for dogs? And they're like, well, dogs hate kennels. And I'm like, well, that is true. Dogs do really hate kennels. Like kennels are really disgusting. And they're like, well, this is an alternative to kennel. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And so, yeah, so I've certainly heard ideas where like, I wasn't obvious to me, I spend time with most founders you can probably think of. Right. And so, I remember the moments with like, Travis on, Uber and like, we want this phone to be a remote control for your life. And you click a button and the car shows up in under 5 minutes and that's going to transform cities. And, obviously I spent time with like, early Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok founders. So everyone had their vision. I would say that a lot of them had purpose though. They had like they had a personal need that they were solving, right? The founders of Uber wanted a black car to come at their disposal with the click of a phone. They just wanted to figure that out, right? And the founders of MySpace wanted to get laid without leaving their dorm room. They also figured that out, which arguably was the purpose behind Snapchat as well. So, there's a lot of people that have core needs in their life that they're trying to solve through technology platforms that may not be obvious to us on the outside, but suddenly when they get to scale, it works.
So what about you? Like, where is your kind of core, like strong beliefs leading you right now?
I think the more I work with exceptional people, because I'm just really favorable. I mean, I'm in a lucky position. I get to work with exceptional people that are trying to do typically impossible things, right? So I love exceptional people doing impossible things. I love to help them trying to figure out how to de-impossibilize their things and, enhance their exceptionality, right? That's like kind of my job. And part of that's understanding the human condition. just like what makes a human, right? What makes you you, and how do you think, right? And so probably what you're leading to is I wrote this framework called Human Architecture. It's at humanarchitecture.ai. It's free. You're welcome to use it and plagiarize it and do anything you want with it. But one thing I found fascinating was like the rise of AI kind of correlated with me with a rise in mental health challenges that I saw. At the time, I was doing a lot of public speaking around the impact of social media, social media use within teens, specifically impacting young girls around suicidality, cutting, body dysmorphia, et cetera, and the need of therapeutic services. And one thing that was clear is looking across the world is therapists were not going to solve the mental health crisis that the world is having, because there's just physically not enough therapists, and they're very expensive, difficult to communicate with, and typically scheduled. So I was like, okay, you have this mental health crisis. It's not going to be solved by Talkspace. Who's going to solve it? And now you enter AI, right? And what I found fascinating is I kept meeting people that were like, I talk to AI all day. I tell it everything. It responds to it tells me what to reply to emails. It tells me how to, decipher the communication from my partner. And I was like really surprised, right? So I started spending time with these people and understanding how they're using these instances. And it's kind of what you expect. It's probably how some of you use AI, which is maybe you have a dedicated folder on ChatGPT or you use Grok or whatever, and you've slowly been depositing massive components of your personal data into this thing, right? And maybe you didn't realize you were doing it. You were asking how to reply to an email, but maybe you were also uploading data about that email and about your life, or maybe you wanted someone to decipher your friend's WhatsApp message, so you put in a screenshot. But over time, we're all building this relationship with AI where it actually has really in-depth personal knowledge on you. And I would actually argue it has better knowledge on you probably than your therapist, because it's unfiltered knowledge, right? It's you depositing, in many cases, raw data into the system. Not what you think, but what somebody says when you texted. God forbid you connected to your Gmail, right? Then it has everything, right? So I wrote a framework called Human Architecture to basically say, how can we start having AI tell me about me? So, and what becomes fascinating with that is basically saying, you don't know the questions you actually want AI to ask you, to tell you about you. So I said, let's start by saying, let's build a periodic, table of elements relative to your human personality. We'll build out a framework where when you paste in this mega prompt, it's going to basically put out an entire structure of you, how you deal with trauma, conflict, love, sex, relationships, money, family. It's going to break it all down for you. It might even be intelligent enough to cite where it found it within your sources, so you can see how it came to these conclusions. And then it kind of drove me down this path of what are the questions I'm not asking about myself that AI would have reflection to? And so I've been on this journey, but a lot of it's driven because I do work with very exceptional people. And working with exceptional people, I do need to know the way they think. And a big piece of understanding the way they think is kind of understanding the way you emotionally respond to things. And so this is the beginning of me trying to encapsulate years of knowledge on working with people and putting it into a framework that we all just use.
And you see this as something you can then use with exceptional people or founders or leaders?
I think anyone can use it if they're willing to work with, if they're willing to utilize AI from a very personal construct, which I think is totally reasonable, and you shouldn't be worried about that component of the privacy concerns. There's other components you'd be worried about, but I wouldn't worry about that. And I think it would help you relate to others. So I built a framework also where you can share your encrypted result with somebody else. And then it can begin to show how you two interact with each other, whether it's from a romantic or work or professional or friendship, family perspective. So it helps you relate to others by better understanding yourself. And I think there's so much there to be done that I suspect AI, for instance, I found myself feeling at times that AI's understanding of me was more human than human. It had more compassion than a human typically would have in a dialogue with, which surprised me to think that it felt so human to me because it was so all-encompassing in its emotionality reflecting back to me, which is a really weird thing, right? So I suspect over time, we all end up with these instances and we all end up with a reflection framework. And I think it's probably the only thing that at scale can start improving mental health across the globe, because it is an absolute global problem. I sit with people, leaders in Dubai, I sit with people in Japan. This is a global epidemic of youth being depressed and upset and impacted by social media, and it's not going away. I think AI is probably the only global solution for that. And it's about using tools like these to better understand ourselves.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing with us what you've been working on there. I was curious since you first shared about the human periodic table of elements.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. I'm definitely going to dig into it and play around.
Please do.
I have a kind of random non sequitur because I realize I never have looked this up. Why is it called science?
I call the firm science because, I don't think it's actually an art to build a company. I think it's actually a scientific process. I don't think there's actually magic. Like there might be magic in your vision. There might be magic in your belief structure or the way that you approach yourself on a problem. But the reality is like companies are built through a process, right? And I felt like everyone was like, angel investing is art. Early stage investing is the art. It's not a science. And I was like, no, I think it's a science. And so it was more of a nod to the process of building a business, because it needs to be demystified, right? It's not like these great founders today honestly did anything fundamentally different than you could do, right? It wasn't like, they had a different vision, they had the right timing, they ran the right counterparty, they had those right interactions. But the reality is like, there's a process to this. Yeah. And so science.
That's awesome. It's striking me that with that approach, you also chose to do it here in Los Angeles. A city may be more known for the art than the science.
But I love LA because I think it's the home of true creativity. I think it's the center of culture, within the United States, and arguably global culture comes from this creative pocket. As I see AI growing, especially in the entertainment sphere, my biggest concern is that we're actually going to lose because of SAG and the various actor guilds, we're actually going to lose the power that Hollywood possesses in Hollywood to basically groups in Nigeria and Pakistan and Bangladesh. They're going to basically be doing all of our AI creation abroad because we're all too scared to do it within the ground here. But I think the general creativity of LA is like, it's always been a big heartbeat for me. I find the Valley a little bit soulless. So like I've always had offices in the Valley. I spent a ton of time in the Valley, obviously raised a lot of capital in the Valley. They build the absolute best technical infrastructure known to man. And if you're building next generation AI engines and platforms, you need to move to the Valley, right? But if you're going to touch culture, I think LA is your home.
That's interesting. And yeah, you also pointed to there's potentially some real challenges coming down.
Yeah. I mean, I was at this art and AI design conference yesterday in Hollywood, which is actually pretty incredible. Like I'd actually never heard of this conference. It's the second time they've had it. And it's a mix of AI plus artists. And I remember it was almost early days when like Web 2.0 and Macromedia Flash was doing these like artistic collaborations with engineers. It felt like those days to me where they're trying to get legitimate artists to use the tools to kind of destigmatize the sanitary nature of an AI interaction, right? And they did an incredible job actually. It was filled. But I think right now, I mean, the ability to create something today is the greatest it's ever been in human history. I mean, it's really, 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 really incredible. So like, it was amazing going to this conference because like I have a light coding background, right? Like I understand it in depth. I used to be able to code. I'm not a coder today, but I sat in a room of an entire group of people that had no coding background talking about vibe coding and everything they do in vibe coding and all the things they've made vibe coding. And to be honest, I called my engineering team in India, who's a 150 person team in Bangalore. And I think this group of like completely unformally educated people vibe coding, there was like 50 in a room, are probably way more productive than my entire 150 person engineering force out in India. And these guys are like, people would ask questions. They're like, well, how do you debug it? They're like, I don't know. You just reprompt it and it'll just like fixes itself. And then we just move on. And I'm just like, yeah, of course, like it's amazing, like just do that, like they weren't even interested. It wasn't even about trying to figure out how it works. It's just like and so I looked at this group and I'm like, they're building like apps. They're building apps that would take me months to build. They're building this girl built this website that like, I don't know if at one point I owned an agency. I looked at this website. I'm like, I bet someone quote this girl $250,000 to build this website. She built it herself in like a week, like herself. I mean, so you've never been at a time ever in history where you couldn't. So what I'm wondering is like, what is everyone going to build? If we've now democratized building, where there's no more need, there's no more barriers to creation, whether it's art, music, video, applications, mobile apps, web apps, anything, like what does everyone build? I think it's going to be super interesting.
And where does the venture capitalist fit in that new paradigm?
It's a funny time, I think, for VC, to be candid, because arguably what's about to happen is millions of small businesses that may be profitable, which is great, and maybe support 5, 10 people, person companies, but maybe not be sellable. But the difference is they don't need capital, right? Because most of the stuff, any of these, I'll give you a really great example. So we built, Rover Dog Vacay, which is a marketplace where if you have a dog and you need a place to board it, you go there and you meet up with Jerry, and Jerry's going to babysit your dog for $75 a day. Okay. That platform took 50 engineers, full time, 7 years maintaining it to do the communications, do the messaging, the calendaring, the payment processing, the matching engine, the whole thing, right? So there's this program in town called the LEAP program. It's like an entrepreneurship program at Pepperdine every summer. I spoke at it, and this kid from Crossroads contacts me, and he's like, hey, I want to build AI stuff for you. He's at Crossroads, a high schooler. He's 16. I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, sure. And so I'm like, yeah, build me some stuff. So I tell him some stuff, he builds it. I'm like, wow, I don't know why this, okay. So I give him to this team of mine that's building a new platform. The new platform connects people with messy homes with people that will come and organize your home. Super, super simple. It's called Get Sorted. It just is like a home organizing company. So if you're an OCD person and you like to organize people's homes, you can come and list yourself on our platform. They'll give you a little bit of training, and then we'll book you to a job and you can OCD someone's house. Congratulations. It's going to be fantastic for you. You're going to love this, right? So they're like, how do we build a platform? I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you talk to this 16-year-old kid? Okay. So I call him today. I'm like, why am I approving $1,000 invoice to the 16-year-old kid? They're like, oh, well, he built the platform. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're like, yeah, he found some AI engine. He just prompted the whole thing. It handles messaging, credit cards, refunding, scheduling, and matching. I'm like, what the hell? So, wow. So there's no excuses now, right? There's no excuses to build. There's no only if I had some venture capital. Yeah. Right? Which means that us, the gateways to capital, why were there gateways to capital? Why? Because engineering is expensive. You used to have to buy servers and data farms. You used to have to hire engineers and CTOs. You take that away. Yeah, maybe you're starting a canned water business. You need to go set up manufacturing, fine. But if you're doing something in software, I don't know why you need capital. I don't know why you're seeing me. You should just be building it.
Do you think the next phase of your investments will skew more physical product?
I think we're good at physical product. It's fun to do because people eat stuff and drink stuff, and it's fun to make snacks and stuff. So we have more of those deals coming. We're good at those deals. We know those deals. And I like those deals, but for me, I like software a lot. I like social software a lot. I like virality. I like ways to connect people, human experience, through software. So I love those things. They're also way more capital efficient than putting water in a can and shipping it across the country. So we'll keep doing some CPG stuff, but we will continue to also look at marketplaces and social and mobile apps, entertainment. We love that whole space.
Cool. You want to take a couple audience cues?
Yeah.
All right. Anyone have a question for Mike? Thank you. This was an amazing talk. Liquid Death, Dollar Shave Club, and MeUndies. They were amazing marketing campaigns. That was just I never thought about buying shaving, but now I kind of want to do. And
yeah,
Liquid Death is kind of want to drink this. I don't know what this is, but I kind of want to drink it situation. Yep. So my question to you is, how part of the marketing and the production of it were you involved? Do you kind of automatically have a vision of plastic bottles boring? How can we make it exciting? How can I rally people around it? And for the other things.
So yeah, I think in a world where we've now lowered the barrier to build, right? Then marketing and distribution, customer loyalty, engagement becomes your only defensible mode, right? Which means it's really, really important. I think on marketing, it's not done through agencies. Okay. Don't go and hire a creative agency. Every great marketing campaign or every great company I've been involved in where we truly built a brand, it came from the soul of the company. It came from the people in the company, the founders of the company. So if you're the logic builder and you're going to do the spreadsheets and all this stuff, find the creative counterpart that has true vision, right? But don't think you can outsource this. I just do not believe it. Okay. Now, yeah, Liquid Death is a brand. So yes, can we outsource components of it now? Absolutely. But the heart of a brand in my mind has to come from the founder. Go watch the Nike movie, right? It's any great company, those brands come from the heart of the founder. They're not outsourced. So it's these brands, when the MeUndies team, pitched me, they came in with these shots where they had like basically androgynous looking girls and guys on bikes in Brooklyn, in cool underwear, in black and white. And they're like, this is the brand. I was like, yep, I totally see it. Right. When Dollar Shave Club came in, he's like, hey, I made this video myself. Like, he's like, I went to a warehouse and I made this video myself. And I edited it myself with my buddy. And the whole budget was like $2,000 or something. And he showed me the video and I'm like, yep, I see it. We don't even worry about the razor. Like, we get it. And Liquid Death was Liquid Death. It was clear, right? But that came when he comes in, if you ever meet the CEO of Liquid Death, he's tattooed head to toe. He's his skateboarder. Like, when he shows you this, you're like, yeah, obviously. Completely makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, you'll match these founders up, right? But because they are the brand, right? So if you're building software, it's different, right? Because like, yeah, I don't know what the founder of Duolingo looks like. There's certainly not like a green bird, right? Like, it's like whatever. I don't know what the founder looks like, but like these brands, these CPG brands, they do come from the founder, and so that's got to be in the team, right? And then you hopefully have to push to the heavy extremes because you're in a world today where like, you're competing against a lot of attention, right? Through TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff. So it's like, you've got to be 24/7 online, right? So it's like my brands, I'm like, look, if you're not using AI to post brand videos, at least one a day, then you're not even trying, right? I want to see AI avatars. I want to see AI brands. I want to see automated. I want you to tell me your per video cost is under $50. I don't want any humans touching it. I wanted a fucking constant pressure of marketing 24/7, right? And so you have to take it on as like a sport internally. You cannot outsource that.
Awesome. Great question. We have time, I think, for one more. Let's go ahead.
You talked about how companies may not need VC or much VC anymore, but you also spoke to how they do need to know the science of building a company. So my question is, what is science doing to provide the companies it invests in with the tools of the platform that comprise the science of building a company?
I mean, our firm takes on about 6 companies a year, right? Regardless of the amount of capital we have to provide. And our goal is to kind of co-found the businesses with the founders, right? But even if you don't have access to me or my team, because there's limited capacity, you need to be surrounded with people that give you guidance. And there's this component to founding a business, which it sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. On one hand, you have to be very stubborn, right? Because you're trying to do something that you probably shouldn't do, that'll probably make you lose money, that probably is illogical, that you'll probably fail at, right? And you have to be open enough to like get a ton of advice from other people to try to de-risk, right? And so one thing I teach people is like, it's all about stealing secrets. So like I've had 2 founders that come to mind. They both are in LA. One of them is the founder of Snapchat. The other one's the founder of Scopely, right? Scopely sold for $4.5 billion, right? I advised them both, right? Walter Driver, who's the founder of Scopely, like actually worked for me at one point, and then he starts Scopely, and I'm an advisor to him, and he starts meeting with me. And I swear to God, I met with him once a week for 2 years. And for 2 years, I talked so much in those meetings, giving him like all the knowledge I had. I still didn't know what Scopely did. Like, I still am kind of unsure how they did what they did. Like, because he was like, look, I'm not here to teach you secrets. I'm here to steal your shit. And great founders steal. They meet with people that are smarter with them, and they don't try to be more arrogant than them. Walter didn't come in and say, hey, Mike, I'm going to build a bigger company than you. Fuck you. He's like, Mike, I want to hear everything you've ever heard from every founder that got to be big. Right? So yes, you need to be arrogant, but you also need to walk in real humble. And you got to steal those tips. Right? So what I'd say is, in a world where you're not all going to be surrounded by science or another entity, you need to find your way to these people. And you don't go in to prove yourself. You go in to steal, and you reward them with equity. Right? You give them vested equity over 2-4 years. You meet with them every week. You hold them accountable, but you go in looking for secrets. And their goal every week is to give you a secret. You got to make sure they know this, right? You got to collect those tips, right? Because it's those little nuances that everyone has that they don't want to tell you, that only they know. Those are the things that make these things work. And in our business, this could be tiny. This could be, well, did you know that like that button would perform twice as well if it was green versus blue? Because by the way, did you know that green buttons perform better than every other color on pretty much every website ever known to man? And do you know that if you're doing something that has a conversion rate, like a checkout flow or a create new user password, that if your button isn't green, people might not click it? Did you know that if your button has to scroll below the bottom screen of a mobile phone, that the reduction rate is like half of which people will actually complete your sign-up rate? These are tiny, tiny, tiny fucking details, right? That may be the difference between your company working or not. Let me tell you something else. A while ago, we all played this CAC LTV game, customer acquisition cost, lifetime user value. We bought mobile installs on Facebook. We slammed you into a paywall. We got you to buy your coins, and that was the entire game, right? But we had to do it through the App Store, right? And the App Store took 30%, right? So you had your CAC to LTV ratio minus the 30% Apple tax. Well, did you know that with the Facebook lawsuit that got settled with Fortnite, that you can now, in certain cases, have your checkout flow hit Stripe instead of Apple? Did you know that gives you 30% more fucking margin on your CAC to LTV ratios? Because I know that. You know why I know? Because I was on a fucking board call this morning and they told me, Mike, we've never had CAC to LTV ratios like today, and we've been doing this for 7 years. They paused their paid media spend for like 4 years. They just turned it back on like 3 months ago, and they're like, it's the best CAC to LTV we've ever had. Our growth is back, right? But that's something you won't know unless someone like me tells you, because I get to see hundreds of companies, right? So you need to surround yourself with advisors to give you these little secrets. Because if you try to grind it on your own, you're just going to be like, well, I guess it didn't work. CAC to LTV just didn't work. Apple took too much. Bummer. Shut the company down.
Mike, this has been awesome.
Anytime. Happy to help.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Nerdstage Podcast, where we explored the science behind startup success with Mike Jones. Until next time, keep building, keep creating, and thanks for listening, nerds.